Hey guys, it's Chris from SurviveNnThrive. Today I'm going to be starting my fire series. I'm just going to be going over different ways to make a fire, different techniques like feather sticks, and just a bunch of stuff like that. So this first video is going to be an introductory to fire. It's actually making your fire lay properly, going from little to small in terms of size of sticks, and how to properly set it up so you can just efficiently ignite your fire and just get it going. For this video I'm going to be using matches. I'm not going to be using anything fancy like a ferro rod or flint and steel, any of that fun junk. I'm just going to be sticking with matches, as if you're a beginner with fire, it's something you should be doing too. You don't want to be going out there your first time trying and making a bow drill set and just sitting there with the bow drill set expecting to get fire, because it's not going to happen. And even if it does happen, you do happen to get an ember, if you don't have that base knowledge and you can't efficiently make a fire from tinder up, you will lose that coal anyway and you probably won't get the fire going. So this is just a basic introductory to fire. I'm going to be just showing you how to lay out sticks, some tinder gathering techniques, or something you should keep in mind when gathering tinder, and picking a spot to make your fire. So I'm just going to jump right into it, and I'm going to walk around and start collecting stuff. Okay guys, so I've collected the materials. It rained this morning, and I don't know if you can tell right now, it's a little overcast. It might rain soon, so everything's a little damp, so it was a little more tricky, but it wasn't that hard at all. Something I'd like to point out if you're in damp conditions is to find dry wood or dry tinder, look into the trees. Don't pick up stuff off the ground. And what I mean by look into trees is come and take notice of this pine right here, this white pine. As it goes up, these branches, the low-hanging branches, I took most of these for the fire I'm making now, and from this tree too. But this stuff right here, see how it just snaps off? And if you take it and you can just, it's dry wood. Don't take the branches if they don't break, if they bend and stuff and you have to snap them and then peel the bark. That means they're still green, they're not going to burn. But for the most part, the bottom half of trees, or mostly like pines and stuff, will have a lot of dead branches. See, I'll just show you this one too. You got all dead branches right here. I took some off of this one too. But they're, for the most part, reachable. Even if they're not, you can take another branch and knock them down. And it's dry wood. Even if it's raining out, if you break those branches off and take the bark off of them and stuff, usually the inside's dry. Also, it's pine, so it's a high resin wood, so it's highly combustible. Okay, so I just want you to take notice of what I've done. Let me just get my knife out of one of my knives out of here. I want you to notice what I've done. First off, I want you to notice the bag I have under here. This is just the pack I had on my back. Walking out here, carrying all my stuff. It's just a sports bag, like an athletic bag. I put it on the ground to put it between the dry wood I collected and the ground. The ground's wet. So when the ground is wet, you don't want to put your wood, your nice dry wood that you just collected, right on the ground. It's going to absorb some of that moisture, and it's going to make it that much more difficult for you to start a fire. So the next thing I want you to notice about the way this is all organized is how it's organized. I'm working with a small area, so it's a little tighter, but I have, if you notice the size difference in twigs, starting, this is my tinder bundle I'm going to be using. It's birch bark. It's a little damp, but it should light fairly well. I want you to notice just the size of these sticks. They're very, very thin twigs. I don't want them getting much bigger than this. I do have a few that are like here, if you notice the width of them. But I don't want them any bigger than this. The next pile, I move up in size. So everything from anything bigger than this, I put in this pile. But I'm also trying to keep this pile fairly thin, but not as thin as this. So if you notice how thick this branch is compared to my other bundle, and then I'm just gradually moving up in size. So this pile is smaller than this pile, and this pile is smaller than this pile. Now this is my fuel. These two can be considered fuel, and these are more kindling wood. So they're in the order in which I'm going to put them on the fire. So I'm going to light this, and then I'm going to burn this source, this source, this source, and I'm just going to move up in size. The reason you do that is because thinner twigs obviously are more combustible, they light easier, they take a lower heat to actually ignite. So by doing that, it actually increases how easily it is to start your fire. If you just throw a log on your tinder, it's not going to light. The fire from the tinder bundle or whatever isn't going to actually produce enough heat or flame to actually light it. Okay, so now that I got my fire all laid out, like all my sticks and everything, I've collected them, got them processed and laid out nice and neat. The next thing I'm going to do is choose a spot or a location in which I want to light my fire. Now for me, I'm going to be doing it in this spot right here. Okay, so this is the spot I chose. So the first thing I'm going to do with when I choose this spot is I want to clear out the leaves and debris on the ground. Regardless of how wet stuff is, it will dry out when you start a fire, and you can create a forest fire, you can burn yourself if you're sleeping in a shelter close by. It's just a lot of bad things can happen. So clearing it out, you can use your hand, a tool you might have, or your foot. Now you want to get like at least a 3 to 6 foot radius around where you want to start your fire clear, depending on the size and the length you're going to have your fire there. Now that I have my area cleaned out, what I want to do is, see how the ground's all muddy and wet? I don't want to put my fire right on top of that. I don't want to put my tinder bundle right there. It might absorb some dampness or whatever, and it might hinder my ability to make fire. So if you noticed before, you might be asking why these aren't on my bag. That's because I'm not too afraid of these getting or absorbing a little moisture, because I'm using these to make a platform on the ground. Now, this isn't necessary. This isn't something you need to do. It's good practice. It will increase your ability to produce and make fire. And also, it's a good practice for in the winter or anything like that when you're trying to build fire and there might be some snow. You want to make a raised platform to put your fire on so it's not directly on the snow, because it will just get smothered. So, taking these sticks, I'm going to start my fire right about here, center of where I cleared out. So I'm just going to lay these sticks down, and I want to actually put a little gap in between them like this to let oxygen into my fire from underneath. Now it doesn't have to be like an inch or so spaced out, but I'm just going to lay the rest of these out. Okay guys, so I've laid out my base platform of where I'm going to be starting my fire. If you notice the gaps in between here is just to let more oxygen into the fire. It's also a raised platform, so I'm getting my fire off this moist, muddy ground, so it doesn't smother my fire and anything. Something you should know, these sticks will burn eventually. They're not going to stay there the whole fire. You're not going to be able to pick them up brand new after the fact. They will burn eventually. But it's just to give you a good base start. If you were doing this in the winter to get off the snow, you'd want to use some thick green logs. For this purpose, it's fine just to use this. We're just doing this to raise it off the ground just to get it going.